Let's get some analysis on all of this from Thomas Remington. He's an associate at the Davis Center for Russian and European Studies at Harvard and an emeritus professor of political science at Emory University, joining us from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Thanks so much for your time. Has any real progress been made in peace talks? Because the same sticking points remain on both sides.
No, the simple answer is no. We've not seen meaningful progress. We've seen in what I would regard as a disgraceful pretense by representatives of the Trump administration to claim that there's an American peace plan that's being discussed. In fact, what we know from newspaper reports in recent days, the Trump administration in the person of Steve Witkoff presented a Russian plan as if it was somehow an American product. It reflected really the positions of Russia. And the efforts now in the last few days to revise that plan in order to make it somewhat more neutral as between Russia and Ukraine, to reflect Ukraine's security interests more fully, has led now to the Russian side saying it's unacceptable. That's not surprising. I'm afraid there has not been serious, meaningful engagement on the part of the Trump administration, but rather what looks like a search for rather easy settlements that would allow Trump to claim victory, and I regret to say, would allow both Russia and American financial interests to benefit financially from the reconstruction of the country.
Thomas, from what we've seen from some of that leaked audio from the envoy Steve Witkoff in conversation with Russian officials, it almost feels like the U.S. is looking at these plans that have various points to them, the same way that they worked out a ceasefire plan in Gaza. But these two conflicts are very different, aren't they? It's not just a copy and paste from the Gaza ceasefire plan to the war in Ukraine to get both sides to agree to it, although it almost seems that the U.S. is trying to do just that.
It's a very apt comparison. And in fact, the Wall Street Journal had a very good report indicating that following on the heels of the apparent agreement over Gaza, the Trump administration was urged by Jared Kushner, the president's son-in-law, and Steve Witkoff to try to follow up with some kind of similar deal with respect to Russia and Ukraine. I'm afraid the grounds for such a deal are even more insubstantial, in as much as I think the Trump administration's approach has been to treat the peace between Russia and Ukraine as a matter of territorial exchanges or real estate development, whereas the real issues, of course, lie with the Russian aggression against Ukraine in 2022 and the unacceptable claims Russia has made to compromise Ukrainian sovereignty. But the impulse to achieve a similar deal without putting great diplomatic, meaningful effort into it, that is unfortunately very similar.
And there are suggestions from the Europeans now trying to come up with their own peace plan that would be, one would imagine, more closely favorable to Ukraine. But one of the issues that they've brought up is further sanctions on Russia, a 20th package since this war started. Will that make any difference to the Russians?
I have to say I'm skeptical that it will. The conditions that would make Russia willing to accept a compromise, this peace plan that we saw this week, was no compromise on Russia's part whatsoever. But real compromise on Russia's part, if it wants any compromise on Ukraine's part, will require the realities both on the ground, the battlefield, the progress of the war, and political pressure on Russia from the external community. Right now, the Trump administration is not applying heavy diplomatic or economic pressure. It's in a hurry, I'm afraid, to lift sanctions and to get around to investing in Ukrainian rebuilding so that American companies can profit. And on the ground in Ukraine, the military situation currently is proceeding in an unfavorable way for Ukraine. The advantage in the air war with missile strikes and drone strikes has turned to Russia. So I'm afraid neither the pressure from the momentum of the war nor international diplomatic pressure appear to be sufficient to persuade Russia to accept any meaningful concessions on its own part.
Thomas Remington, really appreciate your time and your analysis. Thank you very much.
You're most welcome. Goodbye.